That announcement is always much too loud. Okay, and we'll, Rana, are you sharing a presentation today? Perfect.
Yes,
Go
I
ahead
will
and share your
share my
screen.
deck.
Perfect.
Hello, everyone. So my name is Rana Hyatt, and I'm the founder and CEO of Solis. And today we're going to talk about the dirty side of the beauty industry. So what some of you may not know is that 80% of people get herpes and pink eye from dirty makeup brushes and cosmetic testers. And the risk of infection continues to rise and costing our healthcare system $5.3 billion a year to treat this issue. So currently, we solve this problem by using harsh chemicals, single-use applicators, and single-use disposable applicators and duplicate tools. We buy a lot of the same makeup brushes in order to service each client. And this actually has a lot of risk associated with it. And the industry is trying to solve this problem by, improving those harsh chemicals, but really they're just not tackling some of the big pathogens that we see that common cosmetic microbes get onto our products, as specifically for professional artists. So this actually makes us the third industry waste contributor in the world. So we decided to actually solve this problem. We created Solis. Solis is the fastest, most effective way to sanitize your tools, all with a push of a button. We've done the science to help you create safely. Our hardware, using UVC technology and provisional patent pending tech that we have, removes the product, fits up to 12 brushes in the unit. It's water resistant, it's antimicrobial, it's surgical grade stainless steel. It's got 40 hours of cleaning time, completely reducing the cost for a single user by thousands of dollars, especially for a full-time professional. So we've gone a step further. We actually created some software, which we're currently developing, and it's basically a microbial tracker and product ingredient interaction list. We know that clean cosmetics has this very vague description around it. What we want to do is actually really service when it comes to say clean cosmetics. We want to define that very effectively by its sustainability measure that we're going to be applying, so that consumers are actually getting personalized microbiome analysis on the products that they're using, and sort of what microbes are actually growing on their tools as they're applying their cosmetic daily routine. And we're able to kind of track that library and allow the user to say, hey, every time that you're wanting to achieve this skin goal, let's say reducing acne, these two ingredients, when they come together, they actually cause adverse effects. So we really wanted to tailor, personalize, and also tell them where to shop at the best price, like the closest to them. So it's currently kind of being done already by one of the industry leaders. However, if you look at the selection, what you're finding is that there's like 19,000, comment suggestions, but they're nothing to do with that individual's personalized microbiome. It doesn't tell them what their skin is. It just tells them like what their objective is, which I feel like it's very common today. And it's a lot of gray area in the industry. So we've had a couple of milestones, and this is where we're at. We've actually developed our Solis version 1, which is completely just a sanitation unit, the hardware itself. And then our objective is to actually launch Solis V2, which has the microbial product ingredient interactor and the app, which we're very close to doing. And we are partnered with the University of Calgary Life Science facility to, train our model from the wet lab, but also from the 3D printing and material analysis of how we can make the brushes themselves actually be more sustainable. We have garnered a lot of interest from the Trade Commissioner of Canada and actually L'Oreal. So we're going to be privately pitching to their innovation team here in October. So our team is small but growing. We really want to fill those gaps that are missing, which is full-time microbial biologist, a sales team, because although I grew up in the industry and I have decades of experience as a professional artist, I know that we need a really robust sales team in order to drive it and really capture that market share. So some of our accomplishments, we were top 15 startups for Inventors of 2022. For 2023, we were actually invited to be panelists, Startup Fest, also invited to meet the L'Oreal AI team from Canada, and have garnered some private pitching towards Chanel, which has been interesting. We were actually positioning a pilot project for them here, hopefully in the next, before year end. And then Cosmoprof Worldwide, which is one of the industry leaders. It's basically, you know, the TED Talk speaking. We were invited to speak there for 30 minutes and talk about the sustainability and the health and safety of our consumers, because we realize this is a big issue, because a lot of the European Union, what they've done is they've actually come together as industry leaders and created an alignment in moving towards this mission and goal. So a couple of the grants that we have is the IRAP grants that we have in terms of our research, and that's been continuous. We are actually awarded another set of funding here. Alberta Innovates the Digital Traction. Also, Alberta Innovates the International Export grants as well for 100,000, which we're just in the midst of securing. So we also have our innovation experts from the Embassy of France, and then also Italy, which are supporting our export, our initiatives there. So our ask is $1 million USD, and that will be sort of divided into research and development, manufacturing, because we are manufactured here in Alberta. We want to lead with that sustainability initiative, our business operations and customer acquisition, as well as our marketing analytics, because we know that naturally our consumers are professional artists, but we know, similar to like the Dyson, that the air wrap was created for the professional, but it transpired naturally into the markets of cosmetic retail spaces and also the luxury clientele market. And then a little bit about us and our history, and then you can order it today. Thank you, everyone. I wanted to preface that in doing this slide, I missed my market slide. So I apologize. I can pull that up if you give me a minute here.
Yeah, Rana, I think you can take your time and pull up slides, and you can also go back over. You still have some time to be able to go back over your team if you want to go a little bit in depth on that side as well.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, guys. I am usually pitching for 3 minutes, so I found this one to be quite long.
Yes,
you only got 3 minutes.
Yeah, you'll have only 3 minutes for one of the pitches in October as well, but your pitch in November, but your pitch in October is going to be lengthy, so we'll make sure you're prepped and ready for that.
Perfect. Okay, thank you.
But yeah, you can pull up your slides, no problem.
Okay. And it just when you want it to just work, it tells you to log in because it doesn't remember you.
Yeah, take your time.
But I'm open to hearing feedback if anyone has anything right now. Is that okay? Or is that not?
Pardon?
I'm open to hearing feedback right now if you guys have any, or if that's not part of the process.
No, we can start with that now if we want to dive in. So how about John, if you want to start with some feedback?
So overall, I thought it was, I mean, for the amount of time you used, I thought it hit most of the high points. Again, if, I would say if you have whatever the 15 minutes or whatever you're allotted, I'd probably want to take as much of that as I can. The other piece, and this is just a general comment, but I'm a big fan when I'm presenting, if I know areas that I may get challenged in, I like to address those proactively rather than addressing them reactively in question period where it looks like you're on your back foot, even if it's a really solid answer. So I'm not saying there are any of those, but if there were sort of certain areas where you knew maybe you're not as strong as you would like to be, or it's something that just is going to be asked, I'm a big fan of hitting those proactively. Really, I didn't get much of a chance to see your team. And so ignore that if this is irrelevant, but from my perspective with where you are, to me, I think it's going to be a lot of the investment is going to be into driving the business side of this. And so to make sure that I'm sort of evolving out of the science focused and, great that University of Calgary professor of whatever is fantastic in getting you where you are. I as an investor would be looking to make sure you have the people you need to sort of get to the next, whatever challenges you're addressing with this funding. Um, it's I was not clear on the strategic linkages. I guess, there's hardware product, which seemed very compelling and seemed like it was geared to professionals. Um, the linkage to that and the app seemed to be much more consumer focused. So I think you could do a tighter job of explaining, you know, number one, why both and sort of the linkages between them. And then the last thing, again, as a general comment, it's a bit of a catch-22, and I'm sure the other people are more active investors than I am. But to me, I'm always conscious when I'm pitching of the expectations I'm setting. And so in some ways, like I'll use the Chanel, you mentioned, Chanel trial maybe starting. And so that's compelling to me as an investor and may cause me to react by saying, okay, I got to get in now before the valuation bump from that happening. But I often see it go the other way, particularly with Canadian investors of, oh, I'll wait to see whether or not that happens. And if it does, then I'll be in. So just as there were a couple that you hit me with where it's like, there was some non-dilutive financing that was in the pipeline, and there were a bunch of things where I could see, well, maybe I'll just wait and see where these happen, which may or may not be advantageous to you. But I thought it was very solid.
Thank you. That's actually really great feedback. Thank you. Would it be better to show you when we're securing them if there is like very strict deadlines that we have in place with their contracts with them, or would it be better not to just mention them?
Like it's really more to just be aware of. It could cause me to want to delay because, hey, you know what? If you get something in place with Chanel, your risk profile goes down, potentially your price goes up. That may cause me to want to move faster or slower. So it's more just being conscious of, if you really need money and are on a timeline, that would probably cause me to position it in one way versus another.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. I will just share this slide here. I did have it, but I changed it a little in terms of its design structure. So it was a little, it was a quick edit here. So I will just share this. So typically this is our Solis, our B2B, because of my history in my experience in the space, like growing up in the industry was really advantageous for me, specifically with Solis. So we have these really great, like strong relationships with our beauty distributors, and we're hosting these demo days and teaching like health sanitation and positioning Solis in a really friendly light with pro artists, and including like hairstylists and barbershops, because those are the tools that are hardest to clean and really the biggest value for the industry. And naturally, when that consumer sees that in front facing, is going to just naturally drive into that luxury market. And the software side, which John, you talked briefly about, just marrying the two together, is being able to license that technology, license that patent pending technology that we have in terms of the microbial library, and licensing it to artists like cosmetic retailers like Holt Renfrew, Sephora, especially when they're trying to capture that customer loyalty, because there are a lot of products on the market. Being able to actively target what's working for that consumer and suggesting the appropriate product for them. So being able to kind of take the hardware and the software separate, and sell both.
Can I jump in here?
Of course, yes.
Okay. So Rena, very interesting. I agree with everything that John said. I had some of the same comments, so I'm not going to repeat them. Have you used this particular presentation to do your 3-minute pitches as well, or is this a new one?
So this particular chart usually just has 3 icons on it, similar to the problem chart, just to keep it, when I'm pitching, to keep it really light. And if they wanted a follow-up or just we wanted to share a data room, then we would obviously send a more stacked deck for them.
Okay, but so for Shibu, what's your plan? Is this particular presentation, you've got 18 slides on it, is this the one that you plan to use to convince Shibu to invest with you?
I was actually planning to take out the case studies, so that would reduce it by, I really want to tailor it to just be 10 to 11 slides. And the last slide obviously just being the QR code. I'm not sure if that is a good idea, but your feedback there. What do you think?
If you don't mind sort of going back a little bit, just to sort of jog my memory. I did feel that you flew past a few slides. So I wasn't able to really understand what was on them. And if that's the case, because you're talking and it's not necessarily aligned with your story, you definitely don't need them because it's coming out in your story. So I think your really strong slide was the one where you talked about that the cosmetics industry was the 3rd contributor to global waste. I think that's a very strong introduction to just a global problem. But you also have like really big problems, and then you also have the problem that you are trying to solve. So the problem that you're trying to solve is infections with the makeup artists, keeping products clean. So I understand that, and I understood that you had a hardware for that, and I thought that was amazing. But then you moved into software and skin apps and 19,000 other products, and it just felt like I moved from a blue ocean into a red ocean, if you know what I mean by that. Like you've moved into a market that is really open for you to monopolize into another market that's cluttered. Everybody is, so that, I mean, I was very confused about that. So I think fine tune your story to what you want right now. Everything else can come later. So if your app is something, as I saw on your product roadmap, it's something that you're thinking about a little later, you might want to choose to introduce that, because if your primary investment or primary use of the initial funding of 1 million is to really take your hardware to market, then that should be the focus, I think. Is that the case? Is that what you're aiming to do? Okay. I would keep the story clean. Yeah, I would keep it very simple and clean. And then, like John suggested, you know, throw the carrot out there and say there's opportunities here to develop the app, to move forward, to do all sorts of things, embed it into your product roadmap. Because I think as an investor, I'm compelled to know this isn't just a box that's going out into the market. I like to know that there is longevity, that I can stretch this out, and there's always going to be a need to sort of update and move on and things like that. So I think those are the key points I wanted to bring up. Yeah, I think a little dusting, and I think you have a strong case here.
Okay, thank you. That was great.
I just want to echo what Sue said there. Is like, I'll be a little bit less polite than I was first. I don't actually see the linkage between the hardware and the software, particularly. I don't mean you can't do, I think they're both potentially compelling, but to me, like where I'm going to spend my money, the skills I need, the focus I have to really penetrate that hardware market, land and expand, versus the, software and patent pending and licensing. But there's very little overlap between the two, which, to be clear, I think both can be compelling. I'm not sure about them in the same. I like Sue's point about So maybe I de-emphasize software and I have it as a, hey, we've done some foundational work, blah, 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 but I still would hit the, okay, but you're not selling that software into the same people that you've spent, years penetrating with your hardware. There would be some of those challenges, but some real benefits to it as well.
Okay.
My turn.
Sure.
Hard to build on great comments, Sue and John, but I will try. So fully agree with what I labeled use case confusion, especially when you get to your spend slide and only 50,000 of a million is going towards hardware, but that's what you led with. So bringing a product to market, that made it unclear as to how well developed that is, or is it just an idea? Overall in your pitch, I very much like the polished presentation. It sort of plays into the industry. The feel of the pitch deck was great, and the way you presented it. I think though you fell off a cliff at the end when you kind of, you got to the last slide, you almost skipped over one slide, and then you, work on sort of a crisp ending to the pitch that projects confidence and has a definitive stop. And I think that would go well. I think it would be very helpful for you to, as a company, think about the mission and vision and let us know what that is up front. It gets back to the use case confusion. Is it sanitization or is it microbiome? You talked about personal shopper, and you talked at one point, you said already being done by the industry leader. To me, that's a frightful statement. These are mega companies. And if you're saying, well, we're going to go start doing something that someone who's already global is doing already, I better be hearing a very different angle to the pitch as to why they're doing it badly and how you're going to protect white space that you see. And I didn't hear that. So that to me is a little bit, it's not a showstopper, it's just worrying. And I think the one question that wasn't answered really crisply was, how do you make money? Right? That underpins any investment. So are you like, is this, to John and Sue, you touched on this too. Are we pushing a revolutionary way to sanitize products into retail stores at scale? Or are you B2C selling user licenses for microbiome? And also microbiome, that in and of itself, like, are you running a lab? Is this an app? Or are you outsourcing through a third party on skin swabs? Like, there's a lot of depth there that I think is just either glazed over or omitted completely. And that the end result is left a little bit uncertain about what this actually is. And am I excited enough as an investor to double click?
Yeah, those were all really, that's super helpful. I think you guys make me nervous. So I understand that my story, what I pitched wasn't exactly what was on my pitch deck in terms of what I was going to be speaking to. But yeah, the industry leader, that's a great comment, because they are doing these sort of hypothetical like personalization, the same way that we kind of glaze over this whole clean cosmetics, but there's really no definition in the industry to say what is it and how do we actually define it on a global level, which is only now coming into play. And that's where like the European Union basically decided to come together as industry leaders. So it's really highlighting the problem that we have, because everyone's just like, oh, this is clean cosmetics, this green stamp issues X dollars. So when it comes to an industry leader doing it, they're just applying a umbrella over something like acne that we can all relate to, and say, these are the 19,000 options that you can really utilize. That we want to take that level of technology that is just basically like, data scraping from Sephora, and saying, we're going to actually do this on a hyper-personalized level. And we will be able to, from a skin microbiome analysis in the hardware itself, do that seamlessly. So when we put that hardware into, let's say, cosmetic retail spaces like the fronts of Sephora, so we know that you're most likely to, if you try the product, you're more likely to buy the product, and you want to do that. Your customers want to do it safely. So if you position Solis inside, Sephora or any cosmetic retail counter, and that consumer is able to try it and really get this guarantee of health and safety, but on top of it, product selection, that's where the two come together, because you'll be able to support that sales objective, which is, something that Sephora and, Holt Renfrew or any cosmetic retailer wants to position and sell. And we'll do it from a health and safety side too.
Got it.
Does that sort of answer it a bit better?
It does. So I would incorporate some of that thinking into your core message and start with the premise that the world works. Like largely today, the world works. A lot of things are happening, businesses are running, and you as a startup, or the company as a startup, inherently you're not opening, like think of a pizza restaurant. That's not a startup. You just need an oven, you need your dough, you hire some workers and you make it all happen. A startup, by definition, is challenging something. So what is it in the industry about this, the world that works, that is fundamentally flawed or broken? How do you see that where these big guys don't? Where in your lane are you going to maintain that competitive advantage? And how does that ultimately turn into revenues and growth and return for an investment today? So that's the narrative that you have to articulate. And I think there's a lot of great check marks here. I think just building on that distinction is what, as an investor, you're looking for a unique insight that you're carrying into this market that not everyone has recognized or seen yet. And if you can share with us just a glimpse that you have an insight like that, that becomes very compelling and a reason to, as I said before, double click.
Okay.
And I think just building on, that's really, I'm going to steal that wording in the future. Really well worded. To me, what I pick up is, and once you have that insight, positioning, whatever, how do you maintain that? I think that's really the big challenge, particularly anyone who's sort of worked with or come from big companies. Like, okay, how do you maintain that? And I think a lot of startups, one of the flaws is, that is a freaking brilliant idea. And the second that I hear that idea, I'm actually better positioned than you are to capitalize on it, because I mean, in my world, I have a 6,000 employee retailer as a customer, and I already have a software shop and blah blah blah. And again, I think you have a lot of pieces that make that not true, but I'm always pushing to make that explicit. The last comment I have is just again a bit of a watch out, but I'm always I think a lot of the prep for these pitches is make sure you get really, really big, compelling numbers out there, but you want to make sure they're relevant and not bullshit. So, and I'm not sure any of yours are, but the one that struck me as the healthcare related one seemed like a stretch that you don't. If you need to stretch to make it compelling, stretch. But if you don't need to stretch to make it compelling, don't. You want to be big, compelling numbers that are highly relevant to what again, your hardware is selling into professionals, and my guess is they're probably not the ones using disposable brushes. So I'm not, you don't want me going down a path of how much of the global environmental damage of waste is actually caused by that. You don't need that, and it's not a fruitful place for the investor's mind to go.
Okay. We do have a cost analysis calculator on our website. You can check out if you like.
Yeah, well, I'd love to.
On that note, we have to hit pause. Thank you so much, Rana. And being nervous and for the group to intimidate you, that's why we're doing this. That's why we're forcing you into these uncomfortable positions to practice over the next 5 weeks to get you ready for the big nervous day, which is in October. You won't be at all. You'll be a complete pro by then and be really confident. So I'm just gonna I'm gonna stop the recording.